Hello, everyone, and good day. Happy Thursday. We are almost at the weekend. This is another episode of B Sharp and C with your host, Artie Astor. I wasn't going to do this episode today, but I woke up this morning feeling compelled to do an episode. I don't want to over prepare for this next artist. I want to actually use a lot of extemporaneous expression. Why do I want to do that? Because I don't want to come across as canned. I don't. I really don't want to come across as though I'm sitting here reading notes and parroting what other people have said about this artist that I want to do this episode about. Without any further ado, this episode is about the man. Quite honestly, it's like a pseudonym, but you could say it's the band, the Heavy Horses, but it's really the songwriter Justin Mahoney. Absolutely amazing. Now that I got that out, okay, and of course the title of today's episode is actually going to say this is about Justin Mahoney, right? The Heavy Horses. However, I need to say something. And I had a conversation with my mother the other day, and she might call during this episode because I woke up this morning and called her. And if she does, I will kindly deny the phone call. Okay, my ringer is off, so you probably won't even know if that happens. But, and pardon the sniffling, I live in Florida. You have 365 days of allergies. Great weather down here, great weather. But in Massachusetts, the spring and summer, everyone suffers from allergies. Down here in Florida, it's spring, summer, winter, and fall. Everyone suffers from allergies, even though we have pretty nice weather. But anyways, okay. I had this conversation with my mother, and we were talking about music. And see, I'm upset. I'm upset because I think the 60s and 70s were absolutely key for Western music. Absolutely key. The British invasion, what England introduced to rock and roll, it can never be touched, okay? And I'm not asking for a second coming of the British invasion. I'm not. But what happened then, and the way it was embraced, was really something to just look at and appreciate, because that won't happen again. However, rock and roll might not ever be in the forefront again. Now, I have said in this podcast in the past, and I'll say it again, rock and roll is not dead. It's just hiding in the shadows of the absolute and utter crap that is being played on the radio today. And I don't care. And I'm not going to mention names. I'm not going to say this artist or that artist is crap. I actually really do appreciate the hard work and creativity that is behind everything that's being produced. But if I hop in my car and put on today's pop in my radio and I drive to Walmart to go pick up some beer or a stinking pizza that I can throw in the oven, and I put on today's pop station, I listen to absolute and utter crap for 8 minutes. Okay? Which is why what I do now is I go into the car and I listen to the music I'm working on, which maybe someone else thinks is crap, but I'll use the Bluetooth and I'll listen to a song that I'm working on and analyze it as I'm driving to the market so I can see where I need to make changes. Oh, this drum beat's too loud or whatever. I feel as though rock and roll it's got a slight pulse, but it's hiding in the shadows. And I don't know if it'll ever come to the forefront again, but I do not like what the rock and roll community is doing right now. And you have to follow me on this, okay? Please just follow me on this and understand this is my opinion. It is my opinion, but understand that I have been following music since the day I was conceived, okay? I just love music. I miss old rap. I miss the Beastie Boys. I miss Run DMC. I like all types of music. I don't like today's rap, but I also don't like today's heavy metal. I miss the 90s heavy metal, the 80s heavy metal, just like I miss 80s and 90s hip hop. I feel like music today is so canned, and it's so production heavy that nuances don't exist anymore. When I hear a song nowadays and I hear a little subtle sound in the background, I'm like, oh, look at that. Thought in creativity. That's amazing. But you're not going to get any of that in the mainstream. And when you do, it's an accident. Someone allowed an original idea to seep through. Okay, hear me out. I was having this conversation with my mother. We were talking about rock and roll, and I said, Ma, I don't like what the rock and roll community is doing. They're grasping at straws, and they're essentially saying, look at what we have. And they're trying too hard, and it's complete and total. Well, I don't want to say it's crap. It's just not what the rock community wants to hear. The rock community is the same rock community. We didn't die, you know? It's not like some weird nation flew overhead with some bomb and just blew up everyone that enjoyed music from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, or 60s and 70s especially, where rock really exploded. Those people aren't dead. Their children aren't dead. When I was in high school in the 90s, I will tell you right now, everyone liked classic rock. All right? Everyone liked classic. So why did it essentially die? Why is it hiding so deep in the shadows? Okay. The answer to that question is I don't know. However, there's another part to this whole thing. It's the acceptance that it is essentially hiding in the shadows. Where's your Queen? Where's your Ozzy Osbourne? Right? I mean, heck, where's your Nirvana? Where are these people? What the rock community is doing right now is it's going to Instagram, it's going to YouTube, and it's finding these insanely beautiful young women who can rock out really hard on the electric guitar. That's nice. That's not. I don't disagree that finding a pretty face and a big chest, I don't disagree that that is going to attract listeners. And that is going to allow people maybe 15 more seconds before they go on to the next video. Or maybe they'll share that video with your friend from high school and say, check out how this babe plays guitar, right? I'm not saying that that's not a good marketing stunt. What I'm saying is that's not what the rock community wants. But that is what the rock community is being fed by the rock and roll portion of the music industry. Okay? You have these girls on Instagram who are in their 20s, their late teens, and they rock on that guitar. And they're being sponsored. Guitar Magazine is sponsoring them. Certain companies that make, I don't know, that make amplifiers is sponsoring them. And what happens? What happens? These people get lifted up as the icons of today's rock figures, right? Look at these girls. But you can't force a feeling on someone. These girls are really talented, yes, but they're writing music and they're producing music and they're working with people who are producing music that's not striking a chord with the actual listeners of real rock and roll. It's amazing. I'm not going to mention names, but I think we all know what I'm talking about. This exists, right? Rock and roll is trying, but it's failing. Okay, that's not what we want. That's not rock and roll. I don't want to watch a 18-year-old girl do 1980s hair metal by herself with this band of people who are following her because they're essentially getting paid to because she's getting sponsored, right? She's cute and plays guitar. She needs to be famous. This is it. This is the next generation of rockers. No, the next generation of rockers is going to do exactly what the old generation of rockers did. They're going to express themselves with melodies, with chord changes, with crazy guitar solos, with great backing vocals, and great, great songwriting. That is what rock and roll was about. It was never about a teenage girl or some blonde girl in her mid-20s sitting there all dolled up with makeup playing a crazy guitar solo like Steve Vai. That's really not what the rock community wants. It's going to generate views. Trust me, it's going to generate views. It's not what the community of rock listeners needs, okay? But going back to what this whole entire episode is about, okay? Essentially, what we have is, throughout the decades, certain forms of music have died, okay? But one genre has stayed exactly the same. It's been a beacon of light staying in the background. And I want you to hear me out on this, and don't judge me when you hear the word, okay? Because a lot of people hear this word for this genre of music, and they throw up in their mouth, all right? You let go of your prejudices and listen to what I'm saying. Over the decades, we'll start in the 60s, okay? 60s, 70s, 80s. By the 80s, that classic rock feel was dying. Yes, you had Eric Clapton doing his thing and other people doing their thing, but rock and roll was slowly dying. And then came the 90s, where rock and roll had a faint pulse. Let's get the paramedics over here. I have a pulse. I have a pulse, right? And then came the 2000s, where all of a sudden, even good pop, the Elton Johns and the Billy Joels, right? The Madonnas, Michael Jackson, good pop seems to be kind of fading, okay? Good hip hop began to fade. All of a sudden, you got this overproduced hip hop that lacked creativity, right? Rock and roll, by 2010, what's rock and roll? Oh, classic. You mean the oldies? The oldies? I know the oldies. Oh, yeah, my grandfather used to listen to that while he used to smoke his pipe and ride his horse around town. Oh, yeah. Right? So now, all of a sudden, 2020, and you have the Billboard Hot 100 that is full of heartless, feelingless music. Canned music that it is so overly produced and so overly promoted that it's just there. And we're forced to accept it. But over the decades, while everything was fading into the background, one genre stayed the same. Okay? It was never the best genre in the world, never the most popular genre in the world, never the most talked about, never the sexiest, never the dirtiest, the raunchiest, the most daring. It's just been there, but it never wavered over the decades. What am I talking about? You know what I'm talking about. Country. Country music, folk music. It was never the best and sexiest music out there. But then again, it never died. Its fan base is loyal. And country is not just one genre. It's a universe. And in that universe exist galaxies. It exists folk music, old country, dark country, contemporary country, traditional country, blues country, country rock. That genre, the country universe, is out there, and it has not wavered. And it has produced an artist who I think needs to be looked at. We need to be sharp and see the heavy horses. I can go from what I saw online, and I did do some research. I did not sit here and do hours of research. I want what I'm about to say to be from the heart. I really want it to be just extemporaneous. But I do have some notes, because you have to have notes if you want to read the lyrics to one of his songs, right? But let's look at these songs, okay? The Heavy Horses, the song Bended Knee, okay? Let me read some of these lyrics for you. I heard the cavalry ride that day. My parents hid me, and there I'd stay. Then the troops came one by one. Men with honor, men with virtue, men with none. This first verse is literally screaming out depth, okay? Depth and meaning, but also fantasy. When they held her, I heard him cry, and when they butchered him, I watched her die. I shed no tears and vowed that day men would crumble, men would suffer, men would pay. And then he goes on, before the war came, I was free, then a darkness consumed me. The face of war is all I see, and I find no hope on bended knee. And then on the second chorus, it's different. He says, before the war came, I was free. Now a darkness consumes me. I'm the last face men will see when they waste their breath on bended knee. He essentially becomes an executioner, killing people. He vowed that he would kill people. Did Justin Mahoney actually go on some wild killing spree? No. What is he singing about? He's fantasizing. Now, maybe he looked up some actual occurrence that took place in the old American West in the 1800s. I don't know. But he's fantasizing about the American West. Okay? It's an adventure. The American West is an adventure that shouldn't be forgotten. And it's also worthy of note to keep in mind that this type of music is almost kind of having a renaissance also, even though it's been there in the shadows and it hasn't gone anywhere. This type of Western music is having, and I don't mean Western in the global sense, I mean the far West, the American West, New Mexico, Nevada, right? Arizona, and even Kansas in some of these songs, that feeling of the Old West, you know? Here's what's interesting about this. This genre of music permeates right through all different types of personalities, all different types of cultures. I mean, the Latin culture is extremely accepting of this type of music, this old country, this dark country, right? You should go onto YouTube and just put in the Heavy Horses and then look at some of the songs that come up, and you will see a lot of them actually have lyrics in Brazilian Portuguese, because the Brazilian community has also embraced this type of music, and especially the Heavy Horses. Why? Well, it's fantasy. They get it. They understand the feel of it, and they understand the fantasy of it. And a lot of cultures, Mark Knopfler, for crying out loud, when he left Dire Straits, he even said it in an interview, I am enamored with the American West. And he started writing songs about the American West. And something else that I think is very interesting for Justin Mahoney, he's from Newfoundland. Okay, he lives in eastern Canada, but yet he is enamored with the old country. In fact, I'll be hard-pressed to find anyone who sings about the old American West who's actually from New Mexico or Arizona or Nevada. Most people aren't. But you see, it's a fantasy. And if you watch those movies, it just smacks of freedom. It smacks of adventure, you know, mystery. And music has captured that feeling, and they've put it in song. They've put lyrics to it. They've put pedal steel guitar to it, okay? This song, Bended Knee, the organ comes in the second verse, okay? This nice, smooth organ that just kind of hugs you. And then the pedal steel is amazing in this because it just kind of weaves in and out of the song. And then there's a pedal steel solo. And then after the solo, there's like a different organ. It's almost like a Hammond sound. And then you hear the violin like in the right ear while the pedal steel continues to slide in and out on the left side. You know, so listen to these songs, listen to them with headphones. And at one point, you almost hear two organs at the same time, but it's very subtle, but it's eerie. It pulls you in, okay? I don't know, a funny story, real quick, a little sidebar. A friend of mine from Brazil, he's 18 years old, okay? I'm 45, all right? He's 18 years old. He's a friend of mine from Brazil. He spent many years in the United States, but he was born in Brazil, and he moved back, okay? His name is Henrique. He sent me a message recently. This is really interesting, of some old guy playing a guitar and singing a song. You know what he said to me? Artie, this song is amazing. Did this man write this song, or is this some other song out there? So Henrique contacts me. He's actually looking to find the original version of the song. And I did all the research I could. I grabbed the lyrics. I put them onto Google. I couldn't find an actual song. So I said, dude, I think you made this up, to be honest with you. But I know this style. It's old country. And it's kind of like an old dark country style, you know? And I sent him some links. I sent him the Heavy Horses. He got back to me. This is the style. This is it. Oh my God, I love this. 18 years old, raised in Brazil. This music is either going to become more popular or it's just going to continue to do what it's done over the decades. Stay strong, but out of the limelight, you know? But every now and then someone hits Willie Nelson, the limelight, bam, popular. Right? Gordon Lightfoot, another Canadian folk singer, bam, into the limelight, popular. It does happen. I would love to see the day where someone like Justin Mahoney, right? I would love to see the day where someone like him actually gets the credit that he deserves for doing something so amazingly beautiful. Hell Awaits, another song by him. The same style. This is all the same genre. You have strumming and finger picking happening at the same time, pedal steel coming out of the right ear. You hear something going on with an electric guitar in the left ear, right? But the pedal steel in the right ear kind of stops its twanging and every now and then plucks like a regular electric guitar. You know something is happening in this song, and it's not the music. There's something else. A perfect note choice for the vocal melody. It is perfect. It goes exactly where your soul needs it to go. As you're listening to Justin Mahoney sing the song, he takes it vocally exactly where you expect it to go. The song writes itself, and the song kind of sings itself from beginning to end through this song and just takes you on a journey. And again, the lyrics are amazing. It's a fantasy. It's an adventure. It's mystical. It's the Old West. He's telling stories. Yes, a man from Eastern Canada is talking about the American West. And it's mystifying. It's gripping. It's beautiful the way he sings it. Pale Rider. This song has 5 million views, over 5 million views on YouTube. My opinion? Go ahead and laugh in my face. It should have 500 million views. This is creativity on a level that we haven't seen in decades. It's just perfect. And we embraced this type of music in the early 70s. We embraced Johnny Cash. We embraced Gordon Lightfoot, right? This song, The Pale Rider, it's got low strumming and plucking. But again, you hear plucking from the steel slide guitar in one ear. But then, I don't know if it's a bouzouki or if it's a mandolin, but in the right ear, you hear plucking from one of those small guitars like a mandolin, right? Listen to the song. Listen to the structure. Listen to the words. And the American West, it shouldn't be forgotten. It was an interesting time. Why do you think Western movies, Western films were so popular? And let's just face it, none of these films depict what life was actually like back then. Doc Holliday was not like any of the movies actually portray him. But still, there's something about it. I've been out there. I've been in Nevada driving up north from Las Vegas to Reno. You drive through the OK Corral. You see actual ghost towns. They actually do exist. They inspire. They force you to imagine things. They force you to activate the deepest recesses of your imagination. And you know what? These songs, written by Justin Mahoney, the Heavy Horses, do the same thing. It's storytelling at its best. It's beautiful songwriting, and it's excellent, excellent vocal talent. Sometimes I think about the Old West. Why do so many people like the Far West? Let's say Far West, because if you live in Brazil or if you live in some other country, a lot of people talk about the old American West as the Far West. Why do people like it so much? Well, let's just face it. Our soul feels consoled thinking about the Far West, singing about the Far West, imagining it, right? Truth is, the Far West was a time, a place, a life that we all wish we could have thrived in, even though, more than likely, we would have died of cholera or scarlet fever, right? Probably before we hit puberty. But dreams are still found sneaking around in the mid-1800s in Kansas and Mexico. Even though we never really can go back to that era. But who cares? It feels good imagining it and singing about it, fantasizing about it. There's a song he has, In Darkness He Came. He sings about Mexico in this song. Yes, the man from Eastern Canada singing passionately about Mexico. Has he ever been to Mexico? I don't know Justin Mahoney. Maybe he spent spring break in Mexico and was inspired to write a song about it. But maybe because Mexico was such an intrinsic part of the American Far West. You had to escape to Mexico, right? Mexico had its own level of innocence, its own level of prestige when you talk about the American Far West. So maybe that's what he's talking about. Maybe he's talking about the idea of people regarding Mexico in the mid-1800s in Kansas. Maybe he's tapped into that. It makes perfect sense that he would. He's tapped in perfectly to the feeling that we all get when we think about the American Far West. We think about what Justin Mahoney is singing about. And almost every song he sings. Again, creativity at its best. And you know what? For today's musicians and today's music producers, Go listen to some of his albums. The producing is amazing as well. The studio work is amazing as well. But it only is a complement to the beautiful songwriting and beautiful musicality that takes place in these songs. I find interesting too how he gets creative even when it comes to how he packages a song. The song 30-Year Night is pretty interesting. The strumming's a little different. You can hear the steel guitar in the song, right? Like most of his songs. He says the words 30-Year Night only once, and it's not in the chorus. It's actually in the end of the first verse. Why is this a big deal? It's really not. But one would think the name of the song is Take Me Home. He says it more than once in the choruses. But at the end of the first set of verses, he says 30-Year Night. But here's what I find is so beautiful about this. When he says 30-Year Night, it's with so much impact that you know that's the name of the song, even though it's at the end of the first set of choruses and it's not what's repeated. I'm sorry, it's at the end of the first set of verses and it's not what's repeated in the choruses, right? But he writes the song and tells the story in such a way that you know that this 30-year night he's singing about is the title of the song. Deep, impactful songwriting. So listen, I can go on forever and ever and just talk about how amazing the songwriter is. And I'm not saying, I need to make this clear, I'm not saying that country music, I'm not even saying that old country or dark country, I'm not saying that this genre is the next big thing in the world. I am saying that it's got probably the most loyal fan base I've ever seen. And kudos. Okay, and when I talk country, I am not talking just one genre. Country is a universe. It's got so much in it. But I think that this man, the Heavy Horses, Justin Mahoney, I think that this man at some point will make a gigantic impact. I think that the music community at some point is going to embrace him and say, wow, this is good. This is good. And he has been embraced. He's got a YouTube video with over 5 million views. I think one of my songs has 5,000 views. And I was like, whoa, that's awesome. So, but he's got 5 million views on one of his songs. A couple of his songs are in the millions. So I'm not saying that he's totally not, being noticed, but I believe that he's underrated, dramatically underrated, underappreciated, right? So I would recommend, please, go to YouTube. A lot of his videos, they're not even monetized. Seriously. There's one lyric video for the song Bended Knee, which by far is my favorite song by him. And quite honestly, my favorite song right now, period. Out of all the songs I'm listening to, my wife is probably getting sick of hearing the song come from outside my studio here in the house. But yes, please go listen to Bended Knee or Pale Rider, Hell Awaits, In Darkness He Came, 30-Year Night. Go listen to the Heavy Horses. I believe that if you identified at all ever with the 60s and 70s or with popular folk music, you will find that this man is either going to continue to be sinfully underappreciated or at some point he's just going to explode onto the scene and he's going to be the next Gordon Lightfoot or the next Johnny Cash. I don't know. Right now, the music world is unstable and unpredictable, but this man deserves attention. And that is why this episode of B Sharp and C is about the Dark Horses. Justin Mahoney, the Dark Horses, B Sharp and C, the beautiful lyrics, the beautiful music, the beautiful production of the Heavy Horses. Until next time, this is your host, Artie Astor, signing out.
he'd go right back if only he could. A man alone in his old age, told he can't be alone, viewed as a vanishing sage, dying without a home. None of my life matters, not as I sit on my throne, and as my tomorrow staggers, I He feels the weight from yesterday, but he is afraid he's got nothing to say. Tears fill up his lost eyes. He looks for a soul to hear his cries. A man alone in his old age, looking for something true. His heart